People spend weeks researching a new laptop, a new phone. They read reviews before picking a doctor, but they'll pick a VPN based on a YouTube ad. And I think that's a bit of a problem because your VPN sees everything. Every site you visit, every app you use, every search you make, all of it passes through them. So you've essentially replaced your ISP's surveillance with your VPNs. The only question is if that's actually a fair exchange. And here's the thing, some VPNs on this tier list have actually proven net trust and I think are actually positive changes away from your ISP. So let's talk about which providers probably earn net trust, which ones are really good at privacy, which ones are good for general use, and I'll share my thoughts along the way. The scoring itself isn't meant to be serious, it's meant to be educational, so let's get into it. The first one on the list is Proton VPN, and I think this one's getting a lot more popular as of the recent years, to the point where it's almost becoming as popular as some of the more common ones like Nord. So they have a free tier, which is really nice, and it's freemium, so it's a bit limited in some capacity, but if you need just a free VPN to get started, that's one of the better options. They're audited, they're open source, they have secure core multi-hop if you value that kind of thing, and they have a lot of countries, and also they still balance, I think, more of the mainstream usability quite nicely as well, because they also allow streaming. But with that said, they kind of compromise a little bit between privacy and day-to-day usability. They still require an email. Some features are paywalled. It's not fully diskless. And there are some better providers on here from a strict privacy lens. So I'm going to start by putting this in A tier right now, but I'm going to definitely do a final adjustment of scoring at the end. The next one is a very common one. I know a lot of you have heard of NordVPN, and I want to mention that this video is brought to you by Nord. No, it's not. But Nord actually has made a lot of progress. You know, it's a very complicated company because they used to be one of the better VPNs that was commonly recommended, even in the privacy world. Then they had kind of a fall from grace in around like 2017, 2018, especially because they had a breach of one of their Finnish servers in 2018. And then they kind of started moving over to a diskless infrastructure. They started doing independent audits, and they even did things like open sourcing their Linux client, which I thought was pretty cool. With that said, they still collect some analytics. They don't have fully anonymous registration. They aren't, I think, the best service from a strict privacy lens, but they do well for like day-to-day usability. So they have genuinely made positive progress. I'm going to put them in B tier for now. I think a lot of people are just not going to like the fact that they're so in your face with marketing, and I think that's super fair. All right, now we have a bit of an industry leader here in the privacy space specifically, which is Mullvad. So Mullvad, if you've been in the privacy scene, have definitely heard of it. It is known to be completely anonymous. You don't even give an email. It just gives you a anonymous account number, and that's how you log in. They're completely diskless. They run RAM only. They allow Monero, which is a private cryptocurrency. They even take cash. You can literally mail them cash for your account. They're open source, they're audited, and they don't do any kind of weird marketing gimmicks. They just have a $5 a month flat fee. They don't do port forwarding if you like that kind of thing. And also, I say streaming is definitely not a guaranteed thing when you're using Mullvad. A lot of streaming providers will block Mullvad. So I'm going to put it in S tier just because there is no better privacy-based service. So I'm going to start with them, but they are kind of setting the industry standard on what a private VPN can really be like. All right, Surfshark. A lot of people don't know that Nord actually owns Surfshark. They're one and the same company. Now, Surfshark, kind of like Nord, is a bit of a complicated company. They have unlimited devices. From a usability angle, it's hard to beat something like Surfshark. They are diskless, they're audited. They've done a lot of the right things, but again, it's going to come back to the marketing, kind of like Nord. I think a lot of people would argue they do dishonest marketing. It's very aggressive, it's very in your face. They make a lot of claims, and they are still closed source. They still collect some analytics, and they don't have things like port forwarding. So I think it's hard to group up Nord and Surfshark into different categories, given they are the same company with very similar characteristics. All right, now we have another kind of industry leader. If you want the closest thing to Mullvad, but that isn't Mullvad, that has, you know, different pros and cons, it's IVPN. They similarly have that same anonymous registration. They have cache as well as an option, as well as Monero. They're open source, they're audited. They have a smaller network, I think, than Mullvad does, and they are not diskless, but all things considered, they're a very similar provider to Mullvad. I've used both of these providers for a long time, and I think IVPN has a few more like niche features that are built in that make me really enjoy that day-to-day usability. I think their mobile app is a bit better, and I like the UI UX a little bit better with IVPN than Mullvad, but they just prioritize different things, and kind of like Nord and Surfshark, they have different things in their ecosystem. So Mullvad has Mullvad Browser, which is free. Anybody can use it. They also have public DNS that anybody can use as well, which I highly recommend using if you haven't changed your DNS provider yet. But then my VPN recently started doing email aliasing, and they also have a tool called the Port Master, which allows you to like filter things on your computer. And so you can use all these tools independently. But again, I just want to give you some context on the companies that are running these and where they're putting their resources into. All right, Windscribe is actually, to me, very similar to Proton in the sense that they kind of balance the two worlds quite nicely. Like the day-to-day users who just want a VPN for streaming, basic things, and maybe some privacy, but still balancing good privacy. So Windscribe, kind of like Proton, is fully open source. I think one of the core selling points of Windscribe is it's a bit more affordable than some others on this list. They have unlimited devices. They have unhinged marketing, which I actually can't stand, but some people really like it. And they also have a very generous free tier to get you started so you can test it out. So again, Proton and Windscribe just have a lot of similarities in my head because they both have free tiers that let you get started. One thing that's better about Windscribe is it's diskless, and they also allow anonymous registration, kind of like these other two providers. And so, yeah, I think Windscribe could potentially be an S tier. All of these could be S or A tiers. I'm just kind of putting them in general buckets right now. All right, now we're going to move to ExpressVPN. And now I'm going to explain to you this concept of companies that control the VPN space. So there is a company called Cape Technologies that owns ExpressVPN. Remember that name? It's going to come up a few other times today. Now, Express actually by itself doesn't do anything too wrong nowadays, right? Like they're diskless, they are audited, they have over 100 countries, they have port forwarding. And I think really the two big concerns I have with Express, they are still one of those more popular providers. They are a bit pricey, and Cape is this company that owns them. And Cape has this really bizarre history that I think people should really dig into because they haven't really cleared up that concern, I think, publicly very well. And they actually own a few other providers on this list that I don't think a lot of people know about. So I'm going to put Express in C tier right now. But again, this can all change. You didn't have to remember Cape very long because Cape owns PIA as well. A lot of people don't know that they're owned by the same exact company. PIA has some really cool things, like they are open source, they have port forwarding, they have unlimited devices, and they're audited, which I think is really awesome. Some of the downsides, some people might not like their USA jurisdiction, and they are owned by Cape. Those are kind of the two core downsides to make you aware of that. I think across the board, it's generally going to be a better provider, but I don't know. I just think that it's a hard sell for me, and there aren't many users that I can find that I would recommend like these specific providers. But they exist, and I don't think they're going to do you worse. All right, Azure VPN for some reason has just completely dodged my radar for years. It was never in front of me, even though it's actually like when I learned about it, I'm like, this is actually a really good provider. They own 100% of their infrastructure, which I don't think a single provider so far can say this. They're completely diskless, which means everything runs in RAM. And they are open source. They are audited. They do port forwarding. They are based in the same country as Molvad, which is Sweden. Now, they don't have anonymous payments, and they are a bit of a smaller VPN with a smaller network. So it's crazy because this S tier provider just dodged my desk for so many years. And when I learned about it literally just a few months ago, I was kind of blown away. So I haven't actually used it myself to really comment on a day-to-day usability, but on paper and based on what I know about VPNs, it's actually a pretty solid VPN. And so if any of you are Azure VPN customers, I'd love to hear your experience using it because it's a smaller provider. It's a little bit harder to find information about it. TunnelBear, probably popularized by Linus Tech Tips because they used to be a very common sponsor of Linus Tech Tips. They've actually had a very solid track record with doing public audits. In fact, they have some of the most consistent auditing of any of these VPNs on this list. Annual every year since 2017 was what I was able to dig up. They have pretty good marketing. They do have a free tier. They're not diskless, they are closed source, and they are McAfee owned. They don't have multi-hop, they don't have port forwarding. So I think what's tough is that TunnelBear right now in 2026 isn't doing anything that's super crazy unique that gets me excited from the privacy perspective or the usability perspective. So I'm going to put them kind of in the C tier for now, but they're not doing anything wrong. They're just not doing anything super great either. Yeah, it's just hard to get behind it and try to find a place for it for me and where I would try to find a good person for it. All right, AirVPN, I have so many conflicted feelings about. So, 5+ years ago, AirVPN was one of my favorite providers because they were doing things that no one else was doing back then. Like back then, a lot of providers weren't open source, but over time, more and more of them have gone open source. And so AirVPN is one of the first people to do that. They do port forwarding, they have anonymous registration, Monero payments, they have a long track record, all these things that used to make it like really next level just haven't aged well because they haven't really evolved past that. So now we have other providers that do those things, but AirVPN hasn't had any major updates in literally over 5 years. The UI UX is still the same. They haven't done any independent security audits. They don't have an iOS app. The usability is very lacking. And while I like their clients, and their clients are actually designed to even be compatible with other VPNs, so you can import like other VPN profiles into the AirVPN Eddy client. I really struggle to find a person who's going to use this in 2026, to be honest. I'm going to put it in B tier, even though it is on paper a strong privacy first VPN provider. This is my quiz for you. Do you guys remember the name of the company that owns these two right here? It's called Cape Technologies, and they actually own another one, which is called CyberGhost. CyberGhost, again, they do fine things. They're diskless, they have a transparency report, but they do make some pretty bold claims about the privacy they can deliver. It's the same parent company. There's no multi-hop, there's no port forwarding. So I'm going to put it here. I think of these three, it makes sense. They're owned by the same company. They perform quite similarly. There's small differences between the usability of each tool. But overall, I think when it's owned by the same company, you're putting equal trust in a way, right? So that's why I'm grouping these up kind of together so far, at least. Okay, this is the most confusing VPN on this list, to be honest, because it's in some ways the one I personally trust almost the least on this list, despite it actually doing some fine things. And I think it's really just a messaging and a marketing and a branding issue. They actually own all their servers. They claim to be diskless. They are audited. They have a really solid free tier. They have port forwarding. And they're based out of Malaysia, which is an interesting jurisdiction. I don't think anyone else here is based out of Malaysia. Now, they don't do anonymous registration, and only their Linux client is open source, but they actually do fine things. I just kind of struggle to find the right person for this, just because it's a less popular provider, and there's not anything about its feature set that gets me super excited for either the privacy camp or the usability camp, other than the fact that they own their own servers, which I think is actually really cool. Okay. IP Vanish is not going to perform well. So the usability and feature set might be strong, but I mean, they have USA jurisdiction. They're completely closed source. They are also owned by somebody called Ziff Davis, who has owned other VPN brands and has a history of taking them and either doing nothing with them or sunsetting them very quietly and just letting them get absorbed. So they actually own Strong VPN, Safer VPN, Encrypt.me, Overplay, random VPNs. I'm going to put this in D tier just because it's not really strong at honestly anything right now in 2026. And I struggle to find a good reason to ever recommend this VPN. Okay, Viper VPN is another one of those weird hide.me style providers because they do a lot of interesting things. They also own 100% of their servers. They're fully audited. They do actually pretty honest marketing, and they're available in 70 countries. Now, the USA jurisdiction is something to flag just because the USA doesn't have all the same protections as some other countries from a jurisdiction perspective, but that's quite debatable, and we actually don't always see that in the real world. So it's not an instant knockoff, but they are closed source. They're not diskless. There's no multi-hop and there's no port forwarding. So I'm going to put it in like C tier. I'm going to put it with hide.me. I honestly feel like these two might belong in B tier later. So we'll get back to those. All right, this one, a lot of people might have not heard of. This is, maybe we can call it niche. It's actually Mozilla VPN. Yes, the people behind Firefox now rolled out a free VPN called Firefox VPN that's built into the Firefox browser. This is a different thing entirely. This is Mozilla VPN. It runs system-wide. It just happens to be from Mozilla. Now, what people a lot of times don't know is that Mozilla VPN is actually using Mulvad. So you're accessing the same servers. You're just going through Mozilla. Now, you might be asking why you're going to do this. What's the point? But I'm putting it in A tier because I think if you're in like all in on this Firefox ecosystem, the main selling point, I think, for Mozilla VPN in 2026 is its integration with Firefox. So Firefox has a feature called containers, which essentially will automatically like silo different types of websites in the same web browser. So if you open Facebook in one tab, but Amazon in another tab, it actually silos all of that data so that they can't talk to each other. They don't know that it's you, and it's a great privacy advantage. Now, Mozilla VPN is integrated with those containers. And so you can do things like in my Facebook container, connect to Mozilla VPN server X. And so you can have a lot of that kind of per tab control that you wouldn't natively get with just Mulvad. So I think that's the main reason to go with Mozilla VPN. If you're not using that feature, then I would say just go with Mulvad. All right, and now we're going to get into three what I'd consider like specialty niche VPNs that are very different. So the first one is actually from Apple, and it's called Apple Private Relay. It's probably in some ways the most popular VPN on this list, and a lot of people might not even know they're using it. So this is Apple's two-hop relay design, where they're pretty much going to proxy traffic through their own Apple servers, and then also either Cloudflare or like Akamai as a secondary server. It's no logs. It's built into iCloud Plus, and it only goes through Safari. So this is not really a real VPN. This is Safari only. It's only Apple's ecosystem. And same thing on Mac OS. It's only going to go through Safari. There's no kill switch. It's not audited. It's USA based. But here's what's actually quite unique. That two-hop relay design is generally considered to be awesome. Like people who are experts in this space, who study these protocols, Apple has genuinely designed a system where both parties need to be compromised in order for your traffic to be exposed. And so Apple sees who went to their server, but they don't see where you're going because they pass you along to a third party, and then that third party knows where you're going, but then that third party doesn't know who came. So it's a way to distribute trust between two parties. It's quite new. I'm going to put it in B tier. I actually really like the model of Apple Private Relay, but I don't like the ecosystem trap. I don't like how it's browser only, and I wish that they could somehow open up this technology to more people. And a natural follow-up is Obscura VPN, which is a very new VPN provider. They do exactly what I asked for, which is they're going to take that two-hop relay concept, so they have their own Obscura relay. But then guess who they use for their exit node? They use Mullvad. So if you like Mullvad and you want something that's even more trustless than one VPN provider, this is going to pretty much take you through an Obscura server and then Mullvad, and then both parties would need to be compromised in order to expose who you are. They also have anonymous registration. They're fully open source. Right now, they're iOS, macOS, and they recently released an Android client as well. So that it's still kind of new and in the works. They only allow 3 devices. So I think I would put this in S tier, but I think you should understand that you're getting into a newer service that's still being developed, that's still growing. And so that's kind of the caution I would provide if you're looking at Obscura. It's also more expensive than Mullvad, but objectively, you are getting better privacy than even Mullvad is giving you. I think Obscura in 2026, I would overall classify as doing the most interesting stuff in the VPN space. Like Mullvad has been doing very interesting stuff for a long time, and nothing they've done this year is like really like mind-bending for what we'd expect from them. But Obscura, genuinely, of all these providers on this list, I think is doing the most unique stuff in 2026 that's got me personally excited about VPNs again. On the topic of people who partner with Mullvad, Tailscale is another VPN provider, but not like any of these. Again, this is a specialty VPN. Behind me, you see that black box right there where my finger is, right? And that black box is my NAS that I have at home. And that NAS is pretty much my own cloud that I host at home. And one of the problems when you host your own cloud at your home is it's hard to access that when you leave your home because you normally access it on your network. So typically the way to access it is you have to open up ports on your router, which means anyone can access your home network, which is not good. Or you do some weird DIY stuff. There's nothing great, but Tailscale has mostly solved this problem. Tailscale is a free VPN provider. They let you access things from outside the house to like your home network on your NAS. It's like what a traditional VPN was originally meant to be used for. But Tailscale recently partnered with Mullvad so that in that same VPN connection, you actually also can just exit through Mullvad. So now what this looks like is I can connect through a Tailscale connection. And not only can I connect to my NAS in that same VPN connection, but it's also outputting all of my traffic through Mullvad on all my devices as well. So this is a very niche problem. This is actually what I'm personally using right now. I use Tailscale with the Mullvad integration. The only downside is that you're not getting the full anonymity of Mullvad because you still have to pay separately within the Tailscale ecosystem, and they still require a credit card. You don't have the anonymous payments or the anonymous identifiers. So it's a little bit of a different threat model. It's a very niche thing to do. But for any of you out there who are self-hosters or anything, that's the way to go, I think, to simplify things. So you just have to have one VPN connection for everything. All right, next up, we have TorGuard. They are USA based. I don't like their marketing. They make very bold claims about how they're going to make you anonymous. I also think the name itself, TorGuard, implies it has something to do with Tor, which it doesn't. Supposedly, it stands for Torrent Guard. So I'm not a fan of the overall marketing. Now, they do have some really good features. They have port forwarding, they have multi-hop, but they do have USA jurisdiction. They don't have any audits or anything like that. It's a very generic provider on this list, so I'm going to put it in C tier, maybe even D tier, but I'll start with C. All right, we're almost done, guys. PureVPN is quite interesting because they pretty much had a scandal in 2017 where they claimed to be no logs, but they actually had logs, and the FBI got user information from it. So trust is really hard to rebuild, especially when you have all these options on this list. So with that said, they are audited now. They have port forwarding and they're trying to, I guess, build that trust back, but it's going to be really, really hard to earn your trust back after something like that. All right. Similarly, we have HMA, Hide My Ass. And all right, I'm going to start with the good here. I think Hide My Ass has the best branding of any provider on this list. I mean, outside maybe Tunnel Bear. Tunnel Bear is just like unique, but it's, it's like unique to them. But Hide My Ass, I actually think is like the perfect branding for a VPN provider. So I will give them that. And they also have a huge country selection. They have over 200 countries. With that said, they are owned by Norton/Avast. They have UK jurisdiction, which isn't particularly good. They don't have a kill switch, supposedly. I can't say I've recently used them, but based on what I can find, there's no kill switch. They also complied with a UK court order and handed connection logs that led to the arrest of somebody. So, I'm not upset that that person was arrested, but when you're using a VPN, it's supposed to be no logs. You want them to actually not keep logs. And so Hide My Ass is a very easy D tier, but if this was a branding tier list, I'd put them in S tier because I think their branding is really good. All right, and now we have two I just call niche final fun VPN providers. First one's not even technically a VPN. What it does is it's on mobile and it's called Orbot. Orbot actually uses the Tor network. So really it's just creating a VPN tunnel on your device, and instead of taking you through a centralized VPN provider, it's just sending you through the Tor network, which is 3 independent community-run relays. It's all open source. This is the most trustless system on this list, but it's running you through Tor, just through a VPN, and it's going to be quite slow, but it is free, and it is on iOS, and it is on Android. And so if you're looking for technically what probably has some of the best privacy on this list, that is trustless and that is free to access, I think this is something to put on your radar as an S tier option with a D, F tier usability score, if I could, separate those two. And then we also have one called RiseUp VPN. RiseUp, I think, is a very interesting organization. They pretty much host, just on their own dime, a couple servers. They're an activist organization. But, this isn't like a proper full VPN suite. It's a free service, and it feels like a free service. There's no registration. Anybody can use it. But because of that, it's quite slow. And honestly, I think for most people, they should just use Orbot if they're looking for a free but still trusted VPN provider. I'm going to put them in B tier, but it's something to put on your radar. They are open source. You can actually download them from F-Droid. All right, let's actually lock this in. I think I'm going to put Obscura higher than Azure. I'm actually pretty happy with this list up here. I think it's, if I didn't put Mullvad number 1, I think people would be very angry. But for me, iVPN and Mullvad are kind of a tie. Obscura I'm putting third, even though maybe the privacy is better than Mullvad. I actually think that the usability and the ecosystem still needs to develop a little bit more because they are new. Then we have Azure, we have Orbot. I think that's a good order. I think Windscribe and Proton are a bit of a toss-up. And then I think Tailscale is very niche. So I'm actually pretty happy with the A tier here. I think I'm going to put Private Relay above these because, again, guys, from a privacy angle, like I wouldn't trust Apple either with all of my web traffic like this, but the two-party system genuinely is like a mathematical guarantee that you don't necessarily just have to trust Apple. I'm going to put AirVPN above these two, and then I'm going to keep those two together, and then RiseUp stays there. I think I'm going to put Viper the highest of the C tier. In fact, I'm going to bump up Viper to B tier. I think Viper's not a bad VPN, but I'm going to put them at the bottom of B. I'm going to put those three together, but I'm going to put, that's a tough one. I am going to put Hi.me higher here. And then from there, I'm pretty happy with this list, actually. And then the bottom, I'm going to put Pure maybe higher. Honestly, they're all equally avoid to me. So I wouldn't touch these three. So now, Henry, you're going to ask, what VPN should I use? It's so hard. Okay, so, when I was putting this tier list together, I kind of realized there was an overwhelming pattern of 2 core priorities that a VPN chooses to prioritize. The first is just strictly privacy first. So if you are a person, you want maximum separation between you and your provider, you want anonymous accounts, no logs, diskless servers, open source clients, I think you're going to be really looking at a lot of these like A and B tier providers here. Almost all of these are open source. They're pretty much going to fulfill those things. And our tool, vpn.techlore.tech, is just a chart full of data. So you can do things like compare some of those like top VPNs, and it'll tell you exactly how they differ on the privacy, the security, and the usability as well, because that is a real part of this whole choice that you need to make. And then there's a second group of people, which is just general use. Like you want something reliable, trustworthy. You're not a journalist or activist, but you also don't want your internet service provider monetizing all of your data, your browsing history, and you want some basic protection. Additionally, the other thing that's going to really matter here, especially those general use people, that they need to understand is that streaming is going to be your biggest shortcoming. A lot of these top providers don't actually support streaming. And so if you try to access Netflix or Disney Plus, they're going to block you if you're using a lot of these providers. So streaming is going to be the main thing you're focused on. So you're going to be looking at some of these providers that have native support for that, like Nord, Surfshark. A lot of these mainstream providers are a lot more friendly for streaming. And if you're doing the general use, again, our site is going to be very good for that. You can compare things like NordVPN, Surfshark, TunnelBear, and PIA, and you can compare them and see what you like and don't like about each of them. If you know which camp you're in, I think the options are quite clear. But if you're kind of like, I don't know, I kind of value privacy a lot and I want a privacy first provider, but I also want something that's just going to work the best, probably, there actually are two services here that bridge both of those camps quite well, which is Windscribe and Proton, which are kind of the leaders of the A tier here. They're both approachable. They both serve both audiences. They're very, very privacy respecting, but they also supposedly should work with streaming. I'm not really a big streamer, but they both directly advertise this in ways that the other privacy first providers don't. And the best thing about those two providers is they both have free plans. And so you can try both of them out, see which one works best for you. So I think if you're unsure which camp you're in, those are really two good all-around options that I can genuinely recommend. And that's typically where I send a lot of people in my personal life if they also don't know where they are. Now, the only VPN that we have an affiliate link for is Proton. I'll leave an opt-in link in the description. So that's just opt-in. It's fully disclosed. And that's a way to support our content if you're going to go with Proton. Otherwise, again, all these providers, especially like high B, like these two and higher, are all great providers, and it matters more what's best for you and your use case. And I think that our VPN chart is really what's the best tool to help figure that out. You can search for VPN providers. You can filter by certain things. So if you want to see something that accepts cache, that has no logs, they have no affiliates, if you don't want that kind of thing, you can then just compare the providers that meet that requirement and then see which one fits you. So I'll leave our Proton affiliate link in the description as well as our VPN chart. Other than that, I just want to thank you all for watching. I love doing these VPN tier lists. And last thing, this is a perma link, so you can actually do this yourself. And I'll leave that link to this tier list in the description as well. See you all next time on Techlore. Let me know what your favorite VPNs are. And until next time.